A silver coin, once the backbone of Rome, quietly lost half its value in just over a century, yet few saw the theft. Governments have perfected financial tricks like this for over 2,000 years, draining the wealth of ordinary people to fill imperial coffers and fuel dynasties. But how do these methods still shape your life today? And why have they become almost invisible? The real story begins where most history textbooks look away. In the heart of the Roman Empire, a silent transformation began in the imperial mints. Coins that once gleamed with nearly pure silver started to lose their shine. In 64 AD, Emperor Nero ordered the first major reduction. The silver content of the denarius dropped from almost 98% to just over 93%. With each new emperor, the process accelerated. By 200 AD, the denarius carried only half its original silver. The change was almost invisible to the naked eye, but its impact rippled through every market and household. The government could now produce more coins from the same amount of silver, stretching the treasury to pay soldiers, fund monuments, and cover the costs of endless wars. But the real cost fell elsewhere. Merchants, noticing the lighter coins, began raising prices. A loaf of bread that once cost a single denarius soon required 2, then 3. Papyri from Roman Egypt record the spike. Grain prices soared as the coins weakened. Soldiers, still paid in denarii, found their wages bought less each month. Urban bakers and farmers watched their savings shrink, powerless against the slow theft built into the money itself. Debasement worked like an invisible tax. No law was passed, no decree announced a new levy. Yet the value drained from the pockets of the people and flowed straight to the imperial treasury. The denarius became a tool of silent extraction, a mechanical trick that set the pattern for centuries of financial manipulation to come. In late 13th century England, the king's need for cash became a weapon of state. Edward I, locked in war with Wales from 1294 to 1297, turned to the country's wealthiest merchants and guilds. Official writs, stamped with the royal seal, arrived in London and the great trading towns. These documents did not ask for help, they demanded it. Merchants were ordered to provide vast sums, sometimes 500 or 1,000 pounds each, far beyond the reach of most. Refusal meant prison or the loss of goods, as court records and guild ledgers from the period attest. The crown called these prestita, loans in name only. The promise of repayment was a fiction. Years passed, and the money rarely returned. Sometimes the king offered monopoly rights over wool exports or trading privileges as partial compensation, but the true benefit flowed to the royal treasury and the noble class. For the merchants, the cost was not just lost capital, but lost confidence. Money that could have fueled trade or built new ships disappeared into the king's wars and castles. What made the trick so effective was the ritual of legitimacy. The extraction came dressed as duty to the realm, wrapped in ceremony and law. Parliament gave its blessing. Scrolls bore the king's mark. The forced loan became a patriotic act, even as it drained the lifeblood of commerce. The merchant class, squeezed between royal power and the needs of their own trade, learned that wealth could be seized at any moment with no warning and no recourse. The rules of the game had changed. Extraction no longer meant melting coins, but compelling capital. The age of permanent debt was about to begin. In 1694, a new kind of money power was born behind the heavy doors of the Bank of England. The government, desperate for funds to fight France, did not melt coins or threaten merchants. Instead, it signed a contract. Wealthy investors subscribed to government bonds, pooling £1.2 million in exchange for a steady stream of interest. The promise was simple: the crown would pay them back, not from conquest or plunder, but from taxes on everyday life. Parliament imposed new excise taxes on salt, beer, and cloth, essentials for every household and workshop. Each pint, every bolt of fabric, every pinch of salt carried a hidden cost, flowing upward to the bondholders' ledgers. The founding charter listed the names of these original subscribers: London goldsmiths, merchant princes, foreign financiers. Their wealth was now tied to the crown, protected by law and paid by the people. The old system of forced loans and royal threats faded. In its place stood a paper chain, legal, perpetual, and nearly invisible. Debt became a permanent feature, binding generations to the interests of the few. Extraction persisted, now clothed in contracts and stamped with official seals. When the global banking system teetered on the edge in 2008, governments reached for a new set of rescue tools. Hundreds of billions in public funds were funneled into failing banks and corporations. Direct capital injections, emergency loans, and asset guarantees poured out of treasuries and central banks, dwarfing the scale of previous interventions. In the United States alone, the Troubled Asset Relief Program authorized $700 billion, while the Federal Reserve extended trillions in liquidity support. Across Europe and Asia, similar lifelines kept major financial institutions afloat. These actions were justified as necessary to prevent total collapse, but the burden did not fall evenly. Shareholders and executives, whose risky bets had fueled the crisis, were made whole. Bankers kept their bonuses. Taxpayers inherited the debt, watching public services shrink and future obligations pile up. The profits remained private, but the losses became everyone's problem. This is the modern bailout, a safety net for the top, paid for by the many. The true cost is not just measured in dollars, but in the promises deferred to future generations. A promise was made: work today, and tomorrow you will be cared for. For decades, that promise seemed solid. In 1950, each retiree in the United States was supported by 16 workers. The math made sense. Pay as you go, pension systems could deliver steady benefits, with plenty of young contributors for every older recipient. But the numbers began to shift. By 2020, only 3 workers supported each retiree. Demographers warn that by 2050, the ratio could fall to just 2 to 1. Fewer children, longer lifespans, and aging populations have turned the old promise into a growing strain. Every paycheck from the younger generation now carries a heavier load: taxes that fund not just roads or schools, but the retirement of a swelling older class. The system quietly extracts more from those starting out, while the benefits remain fixed for those already retired. The imbalance is not just about numbers, it is about the silent transfer of obligation as IOUs stack up for the future. The cost of yesterday's promises lands squarely on the shoulders of today's workers. A new lever of control appeared with the rise of digital money creation. After 2008, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet swelled from $900 billion to nearly $9 trillion. This was not coins or printed bills, but electronic dollars conjured at the tap of a keyboard. Central banks bought government bonds, mortgage securities, and even corporate debt, flooding financial markets with liquidity. The first to receive this new money, banks, asset managers, and large corporations used it to buy stocks, real estate, and other assets. Prices soared. Wealth holders watched their portfolios multiply, while wage earners faced rising rents and stagnant paychecks. Economists call this the Cantillon effect. Those closest to the money spigot benefit first, while the rest see prices go up before their incomes catch up. The numbers tell the story: trillions in new money, but the gains flow upward. For most, the promise of prosperity remains just out of reach. In 1917, with the world at war, the United States government needed money fast. Instead of raising taxes overnight, it turned to the public with a campaign that blanketed the country in red, white, and blue. Liberty Bond posters appeared on every street corner, designed by top advertising agencies like J. Walter Thompson. Celebrities, teachers, and even children were enlisted to sell the idea that buying bonds was a patriotic duty. Millions handed over their savings, believing they were supporting freedom itself. But behind the slogans and parades, the mechanics were anything but simple. The fine print of bond contracts favored insiders, while defense contractors secured lucrative deals. At the same time, the legal machinery grew ever more tangled. By the 1920s, the United States tax code had already grown to hundreds of pages. Today, it runs to thousands. Only specialists can trace where the money truly flows. For most, the system is a maze designed to hide the cost, while ordinary citizens pay the price. Even now, over half the world's population lives under double-digit inflation or rising debt burdens. As financial systems grow more opaque, the cost of ignorance rises. Real change starts with understanding the game, because the rules are still being written, and the stakes have never been higher.